Betrayal doesn't always announce itself with shouting. Sometimes, it arrives in the form of silence, the kind that clings to the walls of an old house, the kind that seeps into the air until it feels like you're breathing secrets instead of oxygen. My name is Elena Ward. 35 years old. To most people, I'm a successful strategist in a consulting firm, the kind of woman who walks into a boardroom with tidy hair and sharper words. But at home, this house on Wren Street, I am something else entirely. I am the daughter who stays. The sister who mends. The quiet one who carries the fractures so they don't split wider. At least, that's the role I've always played. The house smelled the same as it always had, lemon polish and faint dust. Margaret Ward, my mother, made sure of it. She'd insisted on keeping everything pristine, as if spotless wood could erase the cracks in our family. Order creates respectability, she liked to say, her voice like a ruler smacking against a desk. I had come to help her prepare for what she called a minor update to the estate documents. The words were clipped, efficient, like she was rearranging furniture. But when Margaret summoned you, you didn't argue. I was sifting through drawers in my father's old study when I found it, a folder tucked beneath years of bank statements. The paper was brittle, edges yellowing, but the ink was too new. A will. Dated just 6 months ago. My breath snagged. My father, David Ward, had been dead for 15 years. He had been buried, mourned, and spoken of only in lowered voices when my mother wasn't in the room. Yet here was his name, signed in the bold loops I remembered from childhood, steady as if he'd written it yesterday. The first page declared something impossible, that the majority of the Ward estate was to pass not to my mother, not to Caleb, not even divided among us, but to a name I didn't recognize. I read it twice, then a third time, my heart pounding louder with each word. Elena. My mother's voice snapped from the hall. I shoved the papers back into the drawer and forced the wood closed before she entered. Margaret appeared, impeccable in her navy dress, her silver hair pinned without a strand out of place. Her eyes swept the study the way a hawk scans a field. "You're lingering," she said. "I was just remembering Dad," I lied. Her face didn't soften. Margaret Ward never softened. Memories are luxuries. We have work to do. She handed me another stack of papers: insurance, property listings, tax filings. Busy work meant to occupy my hands while hers directed the narrative. But the letter of his name haunted me. David Ward. Not gone. Not silent. Not the ghost she'd let us believe. When I slipped out that evening, I took the will with me. I told myself it was to protect her, to understand, to uncover, but deep down I knew. It was to protect me. Back at my apartment, I laid the pages flat across the table. My pulse raced. I took out my phone, typing the unfamiliar beneficiary's name into a search engine. Nothing came up. But tucked at the back of the will, in tiny print, was a bank reference number. I opened my laptop and logged into an old system I still had access to from work. One of the perks of being the reliable daughter, you learn how to slip into the gaps people don't think you see. The number led to an active account. Not dormant, not sealed. Active. Deposits, small but regular, every month for years. And each one signed with the initials DW. My dead father was still moving money. I sat there frozen, the city noise humming outside my window, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. My throat tightened. I let it ring, let it stop, then checked the voicemail. Elena. The voice was low, female, older. Familiar. If you've found the papers, don't tell her. Don't tell Margaret. Not yet. The message ended. No explanation. No name. But I knew that voice. Evelyn Cross, our neighbor, the woman who brought us soup when Dad died, the one my mother always kept at arm's length. I leaned back, clutching the phone like it might burn through my hand. My father's name on fresh ink. A secret account. Evelyn's warning. The walls of the house on Wren Street weren't just holding silence. They were holding a story someone had gone to great lengths to bury. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I wanted to unearth it or if I even had a choice. Evelyn's voicemail played in my head all morning like a song I didn't want to hum. At 9 sharp, I carried coffee and a bag of scones to her porch the way I used to as a teenager, when bringing offerings made grown-ups speak more gently. The porch swing creaked. The paint on the railing had begun to peel in thin curls. She opened the door before I knocked, cardigan sleeves pushed to her elbows, eyes as lucid as a clear winter day. "You brought the good kind," she said, smelling the coffee. "Come in before your mother sees." The living room hadn't changed in 15 years. Crocheted Afghan, porcelain birds, a framed photo of the church picnic where my father manned the grill like a king of paper plates. Evelyn set the coffee down and gestured for the envelope in my tote. "You found more than a will, didn't you?" she asked. "I found a bank account. Active." My voice sounded like someone else's. "And the will leaves money to a stranger." "Who is she, Evelyn?" She took a careful sip. "Not a stranger. Not to him." She lowered the mug. "Her name is Lila Park." The name landed with the weight of a history I didn't know. Was she his? "Yes," Evelyn said, not unkindly. "And no. He loved her, but he also loved you. People like to stack love like boxes, as if it doesn't spill." I tried to swallow the hot knot in my throat. "My mother told us he died of a heart event at work. There was a pastor. A funeral. A death certificate." "There was a service," Evelyn corrected. "There was a certificate. But truth has a way of failing tests you didn't know to give it." She reached for a small tin on the shelf and retrieved a key, so similar to the brass one I'd found that my breath snagged. "He left me this as a safeguard. A duplicate to the deposit box. He thought if Margaret destroyed one trail, another would survive long enough to reach you." "Why me?" "Because you listen for the seams," she said. "Your mother talks in finished surfaces." I wanted to ask 100 questions at once, but the porch board squeaked outside and instinct shoved me behind the curtain. Through the lace I saw a shape I knew too well. Caleb, hands shoved into his leather jacket, eyes scanning the street like a scavenger for opportunity. Evelyn sighed. Let him in. He'd only listen at the keyhole. Caleb sauntered in and kissed Evelyn's cheek. "You look radiant," he said, smiling the smile that always got him into rooms he shouldn't enter. Then he looked at me. "So, family meeting without me." "You knew where to find me," I said. "I followed your car," he said, unashamed. "If you're hunting ghosts, I want in." "You want a payout," I snapped. He held up his hands. "I want facts. Then we can Monetize the truth together." Evelyn cut in before I threw him back onto the porch. "Your sibling rivalry is boring," she said crisply. "Listen." She told the story in a few clean strokes, as if she'd practiced it to avoid drowning in it. 15 years ago our father, trapped between debts and shame, began seeing Lila. He promised to start over, promised to pay back what he'd taken from the small non-profit he managed, promised to tell Margaret after the gala. That promise never arrived. Margaret found out first. She confronted him. I asked. "In my kitchen," Evelyn said. "He came to me because he thought I could broker peace." Margaret arrived with a look I had never seen. She gave him a choice: disappear and let her control the damage, or stay and watch the town eat him alive. He wanted to live. He wanted to be better. He also wanted to leave. "So she staged a funeral," Caleb said, half mocking, half awed. "Of course she did." "She didn't stage it," Evelyn said. "She accelerated a rumor and filled in the paperwork. The coroner was a friend. The pastor was complicit with what he thought was a mercy for the family. Margaret isn't stupid. She's ruthless on behalf of the image of us she worships." I set the coffee down before my hand shook it onto the carpet. "And you helped?" "I helped him hide for 3 months," Evelyn said. "In a cabin by Greywater Ridge. He wrote letters for you he never sent because every version made him look smaller to himself. He took photos because memory frightened him. Then he left." "Left where?" Caleb asked, suddenly very interested. "South," Evelyn said. "He said he'd be back when he could return clean. He never did." "Because he died after all?" I asked. The words tasted like a dare. Evelyn's eyes moved to the window. "Because people running from shame often pick dangerous friends. Last I heard, he was trying to fix what he'd broken. Men like David think fixing is just apologizing louder. The room pressed in. Why tell me now? Because Margaret is moving money again, Evelyn said, softer. And because I saw her speaking to a man outside your father's old bank who reminded me of vultures. I think she's rewriting the story ahead of you. She'll make your father the only villain. She'll make herself a saint. You deserve the whole map, even if you hate it. Caleb leaned back, calculating. So the will is real. The signature is, Evelyn said. The circumstances are forged. He made a will before he left. Margaret amended and corrected until it said what she could tolerate. She slid the twin key across the table toward me. You'll need both to open what he meant for you to see. I closed my fingers around the key. It was warm from her hand, warmer than the brass one in my pocket. We'll go to the cabin. Today. Bad idea, Caleb said. If Mom is already sanitizing, she'll have watchers. Then we move before she prints a final draft, I said. You can come, but you follow me. He grinned. Always did. We drove in tense silence along roads that remembered him better than I did, past the hardware store where Dad bought nails on credit, the diner where Margaret allowed us pancakes twice a year if we behaved like future adults. The closer we got to Greywater, the thinner the town became, fewer houses, taller trees, a kind of quiet that could hold a confession without echo. The cabin lay at the end of a gravel road lined with unpruned pines. The padlock on the door was new. I slid the first key into the box built into the frame, then the second. The lock released with a sigh. Inside, dust cloaked the furniture like a forgetful blanket. Light knifed through the slats of the blinds, striping the floor. On the table, a metal cash box, a stack of Polaroids banded with a rubber band turned brittle, and a ledger bound in cracked brown leather. Caleb went for the cash box, I went for the ledger. It opened to neat columns, payments in shaky handwriting, notes in the margins. Paid back to Wren Center, July, returned to L Park, August, owed to M Ward, September, underlined twice. He was paying it back, I said, heat rising behind my eyes. Or pretending to, Caleb said, rolling the cash box key between his fingers. He popped the lid. Inside, $37, a bus ticket stub, and a ring I recognized without ever having worn, Margaret's original wedding band, small and simple. Why would she leave this? He asked. She didn't, I said. He took it. Maybe as collateral. Maybe as a promise to return it. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You're at the cabin. Leave now. I turned the phone to show Caleb. He whistled. She's got eyes. Or ears, I said, scanning the room for anything that hummed. In the corner, a small black box blinked, modern, out of place. A motion sensor with a tiny lens. Smile, Caleb murmured. I shut the ledger and swept the Polaroids into my bag. One slipped free and skated across the floor, face down. I bent to pick it up, hesitated, then turned it over. My father looked up at me from another lifetime, standing in front of the cabin in a worn jacket, arm around Lila Park. They weren't running. They looked, impossibly, like people trying to build a softer world inside a hard one. On the back, in my father's hand. For E. When you're ready to see me as a person. The gravel popped outside under tires. Caleb crossed to the window and went very still. She sent someone, he said. 2 someones. A black SUV idled at the end of the drive. 2 men got out in quiet suits that didn't belong to the woods. One spoke into his sleeve. They didn't look like police. They looked like solutions. Back door? Caleb asked. No back door, I said. Root cellar. We slipped down the narrow steps into a dark that smelled of damp earth and apples gone to ghost. I held my breath and listened to footsteps cross the floor above, the careful pace of people who believe in ownership. Caleb's hand found mine in the dark, not brotherly, not strategic, human. What's the plan? He whispered. Wait for a mistake, I whispered back. Upstairs, something scraped, a chair dragging, then a soft thud, a box lid opening. One of the men swore. Empty. The other said, take the camera. She'll come back. We didn't move until the SUV sighed away and the woods exhaled again. When we climbed back into the light, the ledger was gone. They'd left dust prints like blunt fingerprints across the table, a scuff in the corner where a chair had been kicked, the small lens of the motion sensor black now, as if it had closed its eye. Caleb looked at me. She's faster than we are. She's more practiced, I said. But she doesn't know what we already took. We locked the cabin and walked back to the car. I drove faster on the way down, as if speed could outrun the feeling that we had woken something that preferred its blankets. At the bottom of the ridge, my phone rang. Margaret. I answered. Yes. Come home, she said. No hello, no question. Now. What if I don't? You will, she said. Because if you don't, you'll never hear how your father actually died. The drive back from Greywater felt longer than the trip out, as if the trees themselves had leaned in to hear what we carried. Caleb slouched in the passenger seat, scrolling his phone with forced calm, while my hands gripped the wheel too tightly. Margaret's command still rang in my ears. Come home. Now. The Ward house looked exactly as it had the night before, stately, immaculate, a monument to order. But when we stepped inside, the air was heavy, as though the walls themselves knew what was about to be said. Margaret waited in the sitting room, standing rather than seated, posture perfect, her eyes twin blades of steel. You went to the cabin, she said flatly. I glanced at Caleb, who smirked. You have cameras in the woods now. I have eyes everywhere I need them, she said. And I warned you long ago, Elena. Curiosity can be fatal. I set my bag on the armchair, the Polaroid still inside, the ring, the fragments of ledger notes. Then maybe you should have told the truth before we had to dig for it. Her jaw tightened. Truth is never pure. It's never whole. I gave you stability. That was my truth. You gave us a funeral for a man who wasn't dead, I shot back. You let us grieve a ghost, while he was out there, what? Starting a new life with someone else. For the first time, a flicker of something crossed her face. Fear, maybe. He was weak. He stole from his community, from his own family. I had a choice, let him drag us down with him, or erase him before he ruined you. Caleb leaned forward. Erase him, sure. But why keep the money? Why keep funneling funds all these years into Teresa Alvarez's name? Evelyn told us everything. Margaret's eyes snapped to his. Evelyn talks too much. She talks just enough, I said. And she gave me this. I slid the second key across the table. Margaret's eyes followed it like a predator tracks prey. You don't understand what you're playing with, she said. That key doesn't open a treasure. It opens a ruin. Then tell me, I said, my voice steady. Tell me what's left of my father. For a long moment she was silent. Then she walked to the mantel and took down a small lacquered box, one I'd seen since childhood, always locked, never opened. She held it like it might bite her. Your father didn't just steal, she said quietly. He bought silence. He bought forgiveness he never earned. The accounts weren't for us, they were for the people he wronged. He thought he could pay his way back to being a good man. She opened the box. Inside lay letters, dozens of them, folded neatly, tied with faded ribbon. I reached for one. Margaret didn't stop me. The first line in my father's handwriting burned into me. Elena, if you are reading this, then Margaret has failed to keep you safe from me. My throat closed. Caleb swore under his breath. Safe from him. I whispered. Margaret's voice cracked for the first time. He wasn't just a thief. He was a liar to his bones. Every promise he made rotted before it reached the air. I lied because it was the only way to keep you from chasing him, from becoming him. But you turned me into someone else entirely, I said, tears pressing against my composure. Someone who doesn't know which parent betrayed her more. Silence hung between us like a verdict. Then Caleb stepped closer, eyes gleaming with something dangerous. So the will, the accounts, they're bargaining chips, aren't they? Pieces of leverage. And we've got some of them now. Margaret's gaze sharpened. If you sell your father's sins, Caleb, you sell your own bloodline. Do you really think that will end well? But Caleb only smiled. the kind of smile that had always meant trouble. And in that instant, I realized the real battle wasn't just between Margaret and me. It was between all of us, and none of us would leave Wren Street untouched. The silence in the Ward house that night was like a living thing, pressing against the walls, settling in our lungs. Caleb stormed off toward the dining room, rifling through drawers as if the next great truth might be tucked between silver spoons. Margaret remained by the mantel, her fingers brushing the lacquered box like it was both weapon and shield. I sat, clutching one of the letters. My father's words seemed to blur under my eyes, each line twisting like a knot in my stomach. If Margaret has failed to keep you safe from me, what did that even mean? How could a man I barely remembered carry a threat larger than his own absence? Do you see now? Margaret asked, her voice lower, softer, as if she were talking to a child. He was poison. I contained him. Everything I did, every lie, every silence was to keep you from drinking it. You call this protection? I snapped, holding up the letter. You buried him, Mother. You buried the truth, you buried us with it. You don't protect someone by turning their life into a grave. Her hand trembled, just once, then steadied. You're angry now. One day, you'll understand. Caleb reappeared, clutching another envelope, this one marked with the faded stamp of a bank logo. He slapped it down on the table, grinning like a gambler with a winning hand. Do you know what this is? Transfers. Accounts offshore. And guess whose name is all over them? Yours, Elena. Courtesy of dear old Dad. My blood froze. I snatched the envelope, skimming the contents. He was right. My name appeared again and again, signatures, authorizations, documents tying me to accounts I had never even heard of. Margaret's face darkened, as though the walls of her carefully constructed empire were crumbling in front of her. He forged you into his alibi, she said, almost spitting the words. Even as a child, Elena, he was preparing to use you. I shook my head. No, that's not possible. Caleb leaned closer, eyes glittering with satisfaction. It is possible. And it means we're all pawns in his game. But here's the difference, I plan to cash out. He folded the documents back into the envelope and tucked it under his arm. Margaret's jaw clenched. You'll destroy us all if you go down that road. Maybe, Caleb said. Or maybe I finally get what I've been denied all these years. The three of us stood in a triangle of distrust, the box of letters at the center like a silent judge. My heart hammered as I realized the truth wasn't just tearing us apart, it was being twisted, weaponized, turned into a bargaining chip for greed. I wanted to scream, to demand that Margaret give me every detail, that Caleb stop turning our lives into a negotiation. But instead, I stood frozen, clutching a letter written by a ghost, wondering if the biggest betrayal wasn't what my father had done, or what my mother had hidden, but what my brother was about to do. Because Caleb wasn't just holding those documents. He was holding a match. And if he struck it, the entire Ward family legacy would burn. That night stretched longer than any I could remember. The Ward house, once a monument to order and legacy, had become a vault of ghosts and threats. Caleb paced the study like a man rehearsing his victory, the envelope of documents clutched tight in his hand. Margaret sat rigid in her chair, her shadow sharp against the firelight, her silence louder than words. I stood between them, torn. My father's letters, my mother's lies, my brother's ambition. They were all pieces of the same fractured mirror, and I was staring at my own reflection in every shard. Give me the letters, Caleb demanded suddenly, his eyes darting to the box. If the accounts are tied to Elena, then we need proof it was him, not us. Otherwise, she goes down with him. Margaret rose slowly, every inch the matriarch she had always pretended to be. You would sell your sister to buy yourself freedom. Caleb smirked. You raised me, didn't you? What else did you expect? The words hit her like a blow, but she didn't flinch. For once, I saw the cracks in her armor, not fear, but resignation. Stop it, I said, stepping between them. We've all been living in his shadow long enough. I won't be another pawn in a game Dad started decades ago. Not for him, not for you, not for anyone. Caleb's smile faltered. So what, Elena? You'll just burn it all? Destroy every scrap of leverage we have. I held up one of the letters, my father's shaky handwriting stark against the paper. This isn't leverage. It's a curse. He wanted silence to protect us, but all it did was poison us. Margaret's voice broke through the air, softer than I'd ever heard it. If you do this, Elena, there will be nothing left. No legacy. No inheritance. Just ashes. I looked at her, at Caleb, at the house that had suffocated me for years with its curated perfection. And then I thought of the girl I had been, the one who believed her family's lies because she had no choice. Maybe ashes are better than chains, I said. Before either of them could move, I gathered the letters, the documents, the ledger fragments, and carried them to the fireplace. The flames leapt as if they had been waiting for this moment all along. Caleb shouted, lunging forward, but I blocked him. Margaret gasped, a sound like something inside her breaking. One by one, the papers curled, blackened, vanished into smoke. My father's lies, my mother's cover-ups, Caleb's ambitions, all of it burned until only embers remained. When it was done, silence filled the room again. Real silence, not the heavy, suffocating kind, but something thinner, emptier. A space where something new might grow. Caleb stared at me with pure hatred. You'll regret this, he spat, storming out of the house, the door slamming like a gunshot. Margaret sank back into her chair, her eyes hollow. You've ended us, she whispered. No, I said, my voice steady, for the first time free of tremor. I ended him. And maybe, finally, I ended the curse. I walked out into the night, the autumn wind cool against my skin. For the first time, the Ward house loomed behind me not as a prison, but as a ruin I didn't have to live inside anymore. I had no inheritance, no family fortune, no father's love, no mother's approval. But I had the truth. And maybe that was enough to start over.